that was a decision that I had to make, in my mid-20s. I can't go down this path or else I'm going to die. I was absolutely like the life of the party. Like, I have an alter ego.
Yeah.
I had a drunk alter ego called Fun Bobby, and like Fun Bobby would get into a tremendous amount of trouble. Got into a situation where I was serving bottle service in this very high-end club in Yorkville, and there was a lot of drugs around, and I was making $1,000 a night as a 19-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really dangerous position to be in, and there's famous people and there's people with, insane amounts of money, and this lifestyle was so appealing to me. The benefits that I felt or experienced since not drinking is we have a deeper connection. I'm more clear. I'm more focused. I have more energy. My work has benefited.
At the time where that's what it ended over. It ended over alcohol. It was like, I can't have my kids in this. I can't, like, it has to adjust. And they basically were like, I love you. I'd do anything for you, but not that. Not that. They couldn't reduce their drinking. And end of the day, that ended the relationship.
Unscripted, raw, real, vulnerable.
To build what you want into existence. So I remember our last all-inclusive vacation, which led...
It did not lead to, but go ahead.
Which led to Jane finally jumping into full sobriety, which you've been talking about ever since I met you.
Right. I have a very long and complicated relationship with alcohol that started probably when I was 13 years old. Mm-hmm. So that was this last all-inclusive resort vacation. Yeah. I knew going into it that this was going to be my last hurrah, and that as soon as we got back, I was making a commitment to myself for... it wasn't a commitment to myself forever. I didn't pose it that way because I think we live in choice. Yeah. But I knew always that I was going to have to make a change, and that eventually I was going to give up alcohol. And it was something that I spoke about extensively with my therapist. And so the writing was on the wall, but that was the last time that I consumed alcohol.
Yeah.
So it was 2.5 years ago, just,
So it
for context.
2.5 years ago. So it went from those little, like, all-inclusive cups, like, we're going to go on a hike, and Jane hands me 2 drinks. She has 2 drinks. So, like, what are these? Like, gin and tonic. Like, we're going on a hike, a walk on the beach. But it went from, like, I couldn't keep up with you. You have a bigger capacity to drink.
For sure. My tolerance, I had been building for
a long time.
For a long, long time.
Yeah. And we both have, I think, complications with the, alcohol in our past. I mean, my father, definitely domestic violence was connected with alcohol in my home. But for me, alcohol, I had times, but it wasn't my big vice because, again, I just can't drink a lot of alcohol. It just doesn't sit well with me. But for you, I mean, which isn't to say it couldn't be a problem, certainly could, but I think it was interesting to watch you because I think some of your family were even confused, and it was interesting because we were in a new relationship, but having been in a new relationship, I knew you were reading a book about some connections. So do you want to, like, what led to, like, what, because there are processes that led up to not drinking. Like, it's not an overnight thing.
No, it was definitely not an overnight thing. It was a very intentional decision that I had been making or knew that I was going to make eventually. Mm-hmm. The book that you're talking about is one that I picked up before we went away, and I was actually reading it on this trip, knowing that as soon as I got back, I was going to take a very, a hiatus from drinking. I didn't know how long that would be, but I knew it was time to make some pretty serious life changes. And this is coming off of, I had lost my mom in 2021, and I had definitely, my coping mechanism was for sure alcohol. Okay. And so I was drinking, to the point, like, I always thought that, I was having fun. until
Mhm.
I wasn't anymore, and I wasn't anymore. And so before we even met, I had made some pretty serious shifts with respect to my alcohol consumption, which you're always shocked about because you're like, "You used to drink more than this?" And I was
Yeah.
like, this is me scaling back my drinking, like,
And I couldn't keep up with
100%."
you.
And you
I
couldn't keep.
couldn't keep up. Yeah, there's no way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was sober curious a long time before I actually got sober, and I had been spending a tremendous amount of time, you know, having the discussions with my therapist and talking about what is this going to look like for me? Who am I
Mhm.
without the alcohol? Because I, to be honest, didn't even know anymore. And
Yeah.
so I was absolutely like the life of the party. Like I
I
have
was just
an
gonna say
alter
this.
ego.
Yeah.
I had a drunk alter ego called Fun Bobby, and like Fun Bobby would get into a tremendous amount of trouble. And so there were, it was getting very old, and
Mhm.
as I was also getting older, waking up with this deep anxiety about
Mhm.
like what in the actual hell did I do last night? And I think, you know, so many of us and people normalize this feeling of panic and anxiety when you wake up on
Mhm.
a Sunday morning being like, what did I do last night? And they're like, oh, you got the Sunday scaries. And it's like, yeah, okay, it's funny until it's not anymore,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so I think there's been a tremendous shift within the
Mhm.
past few years, which has made it actually really helpful for me in my sobriety journey, um, where people are stepping away from
Yeah.
alcohol and adopting this sober lifestyle, not necessarily because they needed to or were in crisis, but because of choosing their health
Mhm.
over alcohol.
So they indicate that the non-alcoholic beverage industry is approximately $13 billion, and they're saying the younger generations are drinking substantially less. And I think it's an interesting conversation. Is it from consciousness? Is it because in Canada, weed is legal? I mean, when we went to the stores in California, our mind was blown. You could get any food, ketchup, anything with a
With
lot of
THC
a
in
lot of
it.
THC in it. We were like, whoa, which kind of scared me for somebody with a daughter who might be out and think they're just eating ketchup with
I
their
mean, with
fries. But that's another, that worries me. And as an adult, let's be real. And as an adult, it worries me. But I think it's interesting because there's this shift in awareness about, is alcohol good for us? Like I think on a spiritual side, people talk about, it brings spirits. There's a history bring out spirits, right? Some people truly believe that
some
you
people's spirits
attract.
shouldn't be brought out, you know?
Sure. And I mean, I think, in my life, like again, coming from that history, like I think only a couple of times in my life have I drinking enough that I didn't remember. And that it was like there's this thing in our family, the black temper, right? And I remember like saying there's like I drank too much, I was just mad. I must have been mad that day. And I didn't do anything crazy, but it scared me that I was like,
Mhm.
oh, like I was just mad, like for absolutely not. I went home, went to bed, luckily. But still, like it's a worry. So for you, how did it feel? Like you had a best friend who became sober right around the time, but I think we need to put this in perspective here. Like Fun Bobby, I only saw a little bit, but like once it started to come out, we were at a business function. I was like, oh yeah, we're going home. Like time to go now. Like Fun
In
Bobby is a character.
Fun Bobby is a character. Fun Bobby, in my mind, was a lot of fun, right? And so this was always part of like it was very difficult for me to disassociate who I was without
Mhm.
alcohol from this persona that I had created of like I was the party girl. I was the life of the party. I was the one to get the party started.
Mhm.
And so there was also mourning the death of
That person.
that person who had become so ingrained in who I was. So it was not only like, okay, can I quit alcohol? Can I quit drinking? And can I do it by myself? Which is,
Mhm.
like in
You
reality,
mean without going for
without going
support?
for support,
Yeah,
like,
you had
and I had
therapy.
therapy
Yeah.
and whatever, but is this something that I'm gonna be able to do on my own? And is this something I wanna do? Am I ready to put this
Yeah.
away, to put this outdated version of myself that no longer served me or the people around me?
Mhm.
Can I put this down? And so, I mean, a very, very close friend of mine who was my, co-partner in
Mhm.
crime, like, had the month before said, I'm done. Like, I'm done drinking. And I was like, there was almost as if this, like, weight had been kind of lifted,
'Cause
like,
he was the partner in
because he
crime.
was the partner in crime, and I was like, "Oh, good." So
Yeah.
it almost gave me permission to also put it down,
Mhm.
and also inspired me to some
Yeah.
degree to that this was okay, this was the time, and also, um, I had noticed that us starting a new relationship, we were so solid and we were so great, but
Except
except if we were both drinking. And
yeah.
so for me that was another really, really important and integral factor in what made me decide, not that you had ever even asked or identified it as something that this is going to be an issue if it continues. I knew it in my heart and in my soul that it
Mhm.
would become an issue and that it wouldn't be sustainable should I continue, and also that if I was going to show up for you and for myself and for our
Mhm.
relationship as the best version of myself, that it would have to be sober.
Yeah, and I think it was coming to that point. Like at the end of that trip, we had a light talk where I said, "Listen, like I can't keep up with you and I can't drink more and I can't. So like we need to figure
Well, and
this out." When it's the
I think you
morning and
didn't
like
know.
mimosas and I'm like,
Yeah.
"I am going to die. Like I can't, walk right now." And it's like 9:30 a.m. Like it's yeah, so I think it and maybe
Right.
cuz you knew it was your
I
last
already
hurrah.
knew that it was my last hurrah, so I was less concerned about
Yeah.
us having that conversation because in my mind, like, I am very once I make a decision,
Mm.
I'm very clear that
Yeah.
this is going to be the decision that I make, and, you know, that's not to say that everyone is as blessed to be able
No,
to
it's
do
not
it.
easy.
It's not easy, and it's not that it made the decision easier, but I was very clear that I'm done.
And you've done it before in
Yeah,
other capacities.
absolutely. Like, when I was much, much younger, like I got into a situation where I was serving bottle service in this very high-end club in Yorkville, and there was a lot of drugs around, and I was making $1,000 a night as a 19-year-old kid.
Mm.
And so that's a really dangerous position to
Yeah.
be in. And there's famous people and there's people with, insane amounts of money, and this lifestyle was so appealing to me. And so it was that was a decision that I had to make, in my mid 20s. Like, no,
Mhm.
I can't go down this path or else I'm going to die. And my
Yeah.
dad, is a recovering addict and a recovering alcoholic. And so I watched him and his struggles and his journey and, a couple relapses, and it was, very clear to me that if I were to continue on the path, and the same with drinking, like, my it, it was not about what I was giving up, it was about what I was gaining.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting, like some of the stats, which I know you have an app, which I mean, you can sign up for any app, but it was amazing to watch Jane be like, my liver's healed this much, my kidney, like where you're at, and like the reduction in cancer is the longer
Right.
one.
So
Um,
I just checked my app
mhm.
before we sat down to do this because I wanted to see, okay, where am I at? Because I don't
Yeah,
check anymore. And at the beginning I was checking kind of frequently because I
sure.
wanted to know, like, when am I going to get my language skills back? When am I gonna have cognitive function back again? And
Yeah.
and
Not that you felt it was diminished, but it's just
I
it
did to
shrinks your
some
brain. Oh,
degree,
you
like,
did.
I could
Okay.
feel myself finding words again,
Mhm.
and just the clarity, the mental clarity that I was gaining every day that I wasn't drinking,
Yeah.
and just waking up, I was like, "This is how people feel when they wake up?" Like, I just normalized, like, "Oh, yeah, I feel like shit every morning."
Well, we
Like,
actually
that's
joked, remember? Because I naturally get headaches my whole life, and when I would drink, I would get more headaches, and Jane was like, "If I felt the way you do with, like, 2 glasses of wine, I would have stopped drinking 10 years ago," right? So it's
no, totally.
interesting. But, like, some of the stats, after 30 days alcohol-free, liver fat drops by 15%, deep sleep increases significantly, your skin clears, less anxiety, your energy, and I mean, so many people around me are on the same, longevity is a big thing in our circles. And I mean, I've been wearing Aura Ring for, I don't know, a couple years now. And it's amazing talking to other friends and clients and whatnot. just having a glass of wine, like when you have, and it doesn't need to be Aura Ring, it can be, one of the many other like health monitors, or your, maybe even your Apple Watch, but it shows you like your heart rate is higher, noticeably higher when you're trying to sleep. You have less deep sleep. And even if you wake up and don't notice it, your body isn't having that sense of recovery. So over time, the mental function, the fatigue, you just feel tired all the time. So, I mean, I think that's another reason, like I've had periods with you where I don't drink for a couple of months, or I have a month and, I do a reset. But it's less because just watching the health indicators, I know I can't drink more than that, because I think it's so normalized in society that we just think, oh, a hangover, or you're tired, oh, it doesn't mean anything. And all of a sudden you start monitoring your health and you're like, wait a minute, it does mean something.
Absolutely.
Like this is a big
significant
deal.
impact on your health. And not only that, like the benefits that I've felt or experienced since not drinking go, not only obviously I have deeper connections, we have a deeper connection. I'm more clear, I'm more focused, I have more energy. My work has benefited,
Yeah, you're on it. You're having the best couple years of your
right.
business ever. Yeah.
And I used to think that I was a better realtor because I could, go out and network and drink. But the reality of the situation is these are lies that we tell ourselves. But not only that, my health benefits, like, I mean, after I stopped drinking, those empty calories, like I am the fittest I have ever been. You like
I'm constantly like, eat more.
And it's like I can't eat enough to make up for those calories that I was drinking, right? So like the weight just
some of us don't have the same metabolism.
Fair enough. But I lost over 40 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Like so it's changed my life in such incredible and positive ways, but it's also been difficult and challenging at these networking events, at certain
Well, and
work
certainly if
places.
you have family functions or social fun, I think it's interesting because a lot of people talk about the peer pressure to drink. And I think us traveling, I mean, the one thing I will say is like just from Jane starting to stop drinking till now, the options that are available, like at the beginning to get a non-alcoholic beer, getting now almost we're surprised when they don't have something.
Honestly, I am surprised when they don't have something. There's so many options available to people who are sober or sober curious. And a lot of people are just, considering cutting back, right? And that's a really great first step. And there's so many, non-alcoholic spirits or beers or wines or, Prosecco's.
Not when you're out, but
right. There's just so many different options available to you to make it easier. And I think it's also something that is more socially accepted. So, before, like, even when I first stopped drinking, it was like, oh, why aren't you drinking? Why aren't you drinking? And you felt this pressure to kind of conform or, in a social setting, or when people know you, to always have a cocktail in your hand. It's like, okay, so now I have to explain to someone that I'm sober. No, it's not like that anymore. Now it's just like, I don't drink.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's very, just widely accepted. It's like, oh, okay, she doesn't drink.
But amongst entrepreneurs, even more, it's almost becoming more common that not fully, but a little bit.
Because entrepreneurs were some of the heaviest drinkers.
Sure.
I think the coping, they use it as a coping mechanism, the amount of stress,
denial, right? Like you're drinking, you can go have fun, you can do things, you can blame it on alcohol, or you can hide from things you don't want to feel, you don't want to see. Right. Unfortunately, sometimes it amplifies it in you. But yeah, I think it's just such an acceptable way to act so different. But it was interesting to watch you go through this experience and see that, you had some realizations. I don't know if you remember early on realizing that, maybe you weren't as extrovert as you thought. And then there was a big adjustment in social settings.
100%. And for the first couple of months, it was very difficult for me to go out into these networking events or parties or be around, my friends who alcohol is still a big part of their lives. Right. And so I always likened myself to be like the biggest extrovert. I had this like, liquid confidence, I guess. Yeah. And so I realized after peeling that back and like taking the alcohol out of the equation that I'm like, I would really rather sit on the couch or like go for a walk or like go home. Like I just want to be at home. And there were some anxieties initially because I'm like, how am I going to be received? Like am I charming? Am I funny? Do I have anything good to say? How
Mhm.
are my conversations? And in reality, my conversations are so much deeper now, right?
Yes, for sure.
But I am also a lot more discerning as to what we're willing to, like, what I'm willing to go to.
Yeah, for sure. We don't go to as many things. We go to set things. But I think I agree. Like the relationship is our relationship is deeper. I mean, I think that you worried maybe some friends didn't think you were as fun for a
Well, that's
bit.
fair. I'm like
It's
in
an
my
adjustment, you
I
know?
I'm not as fun anymore. Or
Well,
but
you're
I'm a
different.
different
You're
kind of
real
fun.
fun.
Yeah, I'm
It's
actually fun.
yeah.
Like I thought I thought fun was canceled. Like when the drinking was
You
done,
thought you were me.
yeah, I was like, "Oh, okay, here we go. Now I'm gonna be like Kathleen." But
Fun's canceled.
it turns out no, like I enjoy myself and now I remember that I had
Yeah.
fun, which is really nice. Like it doesn't mean that I gave up, dancing
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
going out or enjoying a beautiful meal without a nice glass of bread. It just means that all of those things, all of those experiences are heightened for me.
Yeah. And I think people ask me because sometimes, when one person doesn't drink, they think that, if I have a glass of wine
Like
or I
it's
do something.
triggering for me,
Yeah.
right?
And it's interesting because I mean, at first I really assess that. Like, does this seem to upset you? Is this going? And I ask you still
Mm,
sometimes if I pick up on, I'm like, oh, do you like, I will just not, no big deal. But it doesn't impact, like, it doesn't seem to impact you because you're in
not
your
at all.
choice. And I think for me, it's a different perspective that it's even easier for me that, the odd time for on vacation. Like I know when we were coming back from Florida and I was like, oh, I felt like I just had too much. So we came back and I didn't drink for, I don't know, a month again or several weeks because it's like more I think there's just a heightened awareness around us about it, right? So I think that that's a positive. I think it's a positive influence for other people around you, even though for me, I don't feel called to fully not drink because I don't drink in excess. And I find it like I relax a little bit. And I think there's all sorts
Honestly,
of different research. Well,
yeah.
she's like, please drink. But there's all sorts of different research, right? On how much. And some of the research is like, if you have one glass, it's relaxing. It's not bad because it's not spiking, right? Like
I
your
think you
your
can
immune
find
system. But there's
research
research that
to,
says
yeah,
any
for
of it is
sure.
bad. So it's interesting and who funded that research, whatnot. But I think end of the day, you know how you feel. Like
Mhm.
for me, one glass of wine, maybe two, but not usually. Like one, I feel I'm okay. And during the week, not really drinking, that's a good set point for me. But if I go more than that, I know, like, I don't feel good. I don't sleep well. I know that I'm making a bad choice. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I will like have a month. So I'm a big fan of people. I don't do the dry, what month?
So dry January, and that's kind of how I think a lot of sober, curious people get started. And I used to do dry January or sober October or one of those things as a check-in to make sure, okay, I can still do this,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of people do that. And I think it's been really amazing in sharing my experiences so openly and
Mhm.
vulnerably sharing like my challenges and in the past with alcohol and what the sobriety journey has looked like for me. It blows my mind the amount of people who are, also considering it or are feeling, and there's a feeling inside when you're like, "Oh, this isn't fun anymore." Like,
Yeah.
I don't feel good about this. Like this might be a problem, or you're questioning, right? Like, is this an issue? How am I experiencing this now? Is this fun for me anymore? Are my relationships being hurt as a
Mhm.
result of my drinking? Am I showing up as my best self
Yeah.
at work, as a leader, as a mother, as a friend, as a
Yeah.
whatever, right? And so it's been so amazing, not only the support I have from other people, like in sharing openly, because I think it is important to share, because I
Mhm.
think in sharing our experiences, if we can inspire somebody else to maybe take that jump or just to ask questions about it,
Mhm.
um and change, anybody's course, like it's worth it, right? So
Yeah.
it's been overwhelming to me, not only the support I've had, but people coming up being like, I'm thinking about it, and asking me
Yeah.
questions, and a lot of questions about like, how did you experience it? How did you handle this? How did you handle this? And so, it's been a blessing.
Yeah. And I think the reality is there might be somebody on here watching and, denial and avoidance is an interesting thing. And I think, trying to have mindfulness and be aware that like anything we're prey to has power over us. And I remember learning that years and years ago. And I do believe that's very true. And I mean, somebody watching this might be, for them, it's chocolate or it's weed or it's gummies or it's like, now it's so much more acceptable. Like microdosing has a place medicinally for people. It's changed people's lives. But then there's other sides where, there's people who might be like eating mouthfuls of mushrooms like every day, where it's not. And I think there's a fine line of knowing yourself and being like, am I doing this to avoid feeling something or seeing something? Because that shame is so powerful. And I've known people who move from, maybe a cocaine addiction to an alcohol addiction to a sex addiction to whatever the next. And it's like, it's transference, not healing. And so I think it's been interesting to watch you. Like, you're very committed to exercise, but not overly. And I don't know that you filled it with something else. Like, I wonder if you got to the point where you're like, okay, I see this. And I'm not judging somebody who fills it. I just think it's an interesting thing for somebody listening to this to say, well, is it something else, right? Is there something I relate to? Maybe it's not alcohol for me. And what's the root of that I can go into choice by healing and seeing what that addiction or what that craving serves for me. Because drinking gave you benefits, right? That for a long time outweighed not drinking.
Right. And again, like, I didn't get to a place, or maybe I did, many times, but I was always very highly functioning. So I didn't have this rock bottom moment.
I only once saw you where I was like, oh my God, you're tipsy, you're drunk. What's wrong with you? I was like, how is this possible?
Right. So the sun. A lot of sun.
Yeah.
But I didn't have this rock bottom moment. There were many smaller rock bottom moments that made me feel guilt and shame and know that there was something that needed to shift. And so, it doesn't have to be, there's always somebody else in the room that you can be like, well, I'm not that bad, like,
I'm sure hang out at the bar with
right. And I'm sure for a lot of people, I was that, like, I'm not drinking that much, but there's always somebody, right? And so you can lie to yourself and be in denial, or I could be like, well, I still show up at work every day. I'm still uber successful. I still, I still make it to all of my appointments. I still make it to the gym. I'm still doing all of these things, but it's like at the end of the day, you're still going through the motions and doing them, but are you doing them with clarity? Do you feel good? Is your soul still intact on a Sunday morning?
Do you trust yourself? Decisions, yourself. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's huge. And I think, we go through hard things in life, and there's roots of addiction. There's roots of why. Like, I remember my kids, anytime they'd stress me out, I wouldn't even know I was doing it. I'd be shoving so much chocolate. Like, and I'd be like eating, not even knowing. And I'd turn around like, when did I even open the cupboard? And it's not the same thing, but it kind of is, right? Like, it's these coping mechanisms that we reenact.
Trying not to feel something, right? And so, and I think that was probably the scariest thing for me in leading up to, like, and you talk about transference, and that makes a lot of sense, because people are running away from something. Addiction is the coping mechanism for them not to feel something, or to run away from something that, whether it be trauma or whatever it is. And so for me, it was knowing that I was going to rip a Band-Aid off without transferring that addiction to something else, and that I was going to have to sit in my feelings, in my head, and that I was going to have to, for the first time, really do that completely clear and sober. And so, obviously, if somebody's considering this, like, you want to have a support network, right? Like, you want to have, whether it be a friend or a supportive partner, but you also want to have a therapist or, a support group. You need community in order to do something like this, I think. And there's a lot of self-work that you need to do on your own, but you need to be in a safe environment where you're going to feel supported while you're going through it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because, I'm more I'm likely to connect. Like, I think I have a pattern with people in uniform, or people, in with the problems with it, like addiction, like alcohol or drugs or whatnot, and overcoming that. And I think it's interesting that, whether you're trying to overcome something that maybe is has too much power over you, or you're a person who's trying to help, right? Like we have an interesting dynamic because I'm that person who will try to overhelp and overdo, but that's avoiding my own stuff. And then when you have an addiction, it's like you're trying to avoid your own. It's the same thing, just different sides of the coin. And I know coming out of my divorce, there was a couple years where I was drinking too much. I was younger, it didn't affect me, but I didn't see it affecting me. And I remember coming out, like doing my first NLP training and certification. And what came out of that was, oh yeah, no, like I don't want people showing up. I don't want to come home from work and there's people at my house and they're having drinks. My kids are coming home from school. Like, no. And that was a big boundary. And I moved cottages because of it too. I'm like, I'm not coming out and there's someone passed out outside my cottage. My kids are here. Like, no. And so I made all these major changes. And I was in a relationship at the time where that's what it ended over. It ended over alcohol. It was like, I can't have my kids in this. I can't, like, it has to adjust. And they basically were like, I love you. I'd do anything for you, but not that, not that. They couldn't reduce their drinking. And end of the day, that ended the relationship. And I don't regret it at all because my kids were seeing that as normal. And that terrified me, right? They thought just, oh, drinking, partying. And later on, my sister said to me, that was never you. Like you were never a party person. So we just didn't know. But it was like my coping with the divorce was that. And I can't imagine if I didn't wake up from that, honestly. So I think the question is, what would life look like for you if you drank less, if you didn't drink at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I were to give any advice to anybody who is sober curious or just like considering it, like just put your toe in the shallow end, like give, Sober October or Dry January a try, see how you feel, see how your life changes, and see if it's for you, or just, even cutting back a little bit just to get a taste for what sober living could look like. And I mean, it's not for everybody. And a lot of people, don't necessarily struggle with it, right? So and are doing it in moderation and aren't having any, it's not impacting their life or their livelihood or their families. And
But other people, I
other
think it
people,
is. And I
it
think it's
is.
been nice to see, celebrities and people, it used to be like your rock and roll, right? Like drugs,
Right.
sex, and rock and roll. But it's like, I think it's interesting to see people living a different way
Yeah,
and
there's been
stepping
an
into that.
absolute shift. Like you're seeing people like Drew Barrymore or like Kate Moss, Chrissy Teigen, people who openly discuss like this, we had issues, right?
Mhm.
Like they very publicly letting everybody know that not only were they struggling with addiction, but that now they are in, this sober living, this new sober life, and how it's impacted their life in such a positive way. And I think, the more visibility there is surrounding
Mhm.
this, the more open conversations, the more willing people are to share, the
Absolutely.
more people that will be helped
And
from
I
it.
think to remember that sometimes the people who have the most issue with you drinking less is because they don't want to have to look at times at their drinking. And I
Mhm.
think that's important to remember. It's not always anything to do with you, other people's judgments, right? It gives you a little bit of freedom.
Yeah.